Hi, it's Charlotte here, and I'm going to be doing my informative speech. Now, something fairly quick to notice is that on the other side of this wall, which is in my room, is my sister's bedroom, and she is on a Zoom call with her pep squad, and they do like workouts together. So if you hear thumping of any kind, that's probably what it is. So I apologize in advance for that. I really do. So, also something else to mention is that the topic, there's going to be some mention of some gruesome things that are kind of uncomfortable and kind of weird. So I just want to throw that out there before you watch this fully. And let's just get started. So, here we go. Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, and Norman Bates from Psycho all have one thing in common. These were all created taking inspiration from the real-life killer Ed Gein. I wanted to talk about Ed Gein because whether we as a society like to admit it or not, the concept of crime and especially serial killers is super duper interesting. As a criminal justice student with the hopes of becoming a crime scene investigator, I would like to think that I have more knowledge on crime and profiling than the average person. Everyone loves to watch a good horror movie, and the chances that you guys have seen at least one of the three previously mentioned is fairly high. Throughout this speech, I will be discussing his early life and how it affected his actions, his crimes, and the specifics of what he had did to his victims, and how he had such an influence in cinema. To start off, I want to talk about Ed Gein's early life and where he comes from. And in order to fully understand what led Ed to his crimes, we needed to take a deeper look into his childhood and where he grew up. Ed was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin, which is where actually my best friend is from, so that's really funny, and later moved to Plainfield, Wisconsin with his family where he lived for the rest of his life. Ed's mother, Augusta, was extremely religious and would preach to Ed and his brothers that all women were instruments of the devil. This led to Ed's hatred for women other than his mother. In 2006, Dr. Gail Saltz wrote in her book, Anatomy of a Secret Life, The Psychology of Living a Lie, that somebody who was a child in an authoritarian home, Ed's mother, Augusta, may feel familiarity and even compelled to repeat what was essentially a trauma for them. Ed was the handyman in Plainfield, and many knew him to be a good worker who always went above and beyond what he was being paid to do. The residents of Plainfield always knew that Ed was a little odd, but they thought that it was most likely because of his mother's teachings and how she kept him and his brother in isolation, but they never thought of him as being someone who was dangerous. So now that we understand his background, let's take a look at his victims and what he had done to them. In November 1957 in Plainfield, the local hardware store owner, Bernice Borden, disappeared, and all of the leads led to Ed. Authorities were shocked at what they found when they went to Ed's property with the search warrant. So a little background, hunting is a really big thing in Wisconsin, and with hunting you learn how to dress a deer and make them so that they're being ready to be eaten. So when authorities went to the shed on Ed's property, they found Bernice Borden hanging from the ceiling, headless, and disemboweled like a deer. This discovery obviously led the authorities to search Ed's house, the main house on the property, and they found bowls made from human skulls, furniture upholstered from human skin, a belt made from human nipples, and a lampshade made from human skin and a human face, just to name a few things. The list is very, very long. One thing to note is that Ed only killed 2 people, and the other bodies that he had used were actually all bodies that he exhumed from nearby cemeteries. One thing also is that all of the victims of Ed were all very similar to his mother. They all looked a lot like her. And so, Amy Bronswick stated that in general, the offenders murder at least 3 victims in a patterned fashion, which is often associated with the traits of the victims. In her dissertation called Using Sexually Related Crime Scene Characteristics to Profile Male Serial Killers in 2001. Their biggest finding from Ed's house was actually a vest made from the skin of a woman's torso, which included the breast. Authorities later learned that Ed was creating a woman's suit so that he could become his mother and essentially crawl into her skin. Ed's mother had actually previously passed away, so that's kind of what led Ed into his downward spiral. Lastly, Ed had a huge influence on filmmakers in the genre of horror films. Producers Alfred Hitchcock, Tobe Hooper, and writer Thomas Harris all took inspiration from the gruesome acts of Ed Gein. The biggest reference to Ed and his creations were in the 90s hit film Silence of the Lambs, which is my favorite movie of all time, where the antagonist of the film, named Buffalo Bill, was in the process of creating a woman's suit. Buffalo Bill got his supplies, as you could say, from the suit from women who he would kidnap, starve so that their skin would become super elastic, and kill for their skins. There is a specific scene where Buffalo Bill tucks his male genitalia in between his legs, giving the appearance of female genitalia. This, along with a short clip of a torso vest similar to one Ed had created, further emphasizes that Ed, just like Ed, Buffalo Bill also was attempting to become a woman. The other huge connection to Ed Gein was in the cult classic Psycho, which is about a character by the name of Norman Bates. Norman Bates has a major mommy issues because his mother, Norma Bates, had raised Norman on the idea that all women are evil and that sexual intercourse is a sin. The storyline is taken directly from the relationship that Ed and his mother, Augusta, had. Robert Bloch, the author of Psycho, told his readers in 1959 that both characters have a fascination with their mothers. Bloch would later admit to his surprise at having discovered how closely the imaginary character that he'd created resembled the real Ed Gein, both in overt acts and apparent motivations. This led Norman down the path of murdering any woman who either looked like his mother or aroused him in a sexual manner. And the only difference between these two people is that Norman killed his mother, and Ed's mother actually died of not natural causes, but both still had extreme issues that their mothers had created. To wrap things up, Ed Gein is a person who illustrates the effects of one's environment on their personalities and actions. Throughout this speech, I had discussed Ed's childhood and his mother's teachings of how they affected him, his crimes and what he did to his victims, and how he had a major influence on the movies that we all know and love. Now, to leave you guys with a little fun thing, now every time you go and watch Silence of the Lambs, Psycho, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you guys have a fun fact to tell your friends and family that these honestly terrifying characters are based off of a real person.